building show in the world. Every Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. CST, live on Facebook and YouTube. Join us as we discuss pertinent issues that relates to you and I with your host, Alinko.
No noise, please, okay?
Very talented young people who have decided to follow.
Then another year it starts again. Well, this is different.
We shall definitely be talking to those wonderful people. Once again, we urge you to share the feed on Facebook.
Hi there, I'm Faida, and today we're going to be talking about the African diaspora in Mexico.
Whether UK likes it or not, I have to leave this country.
I became a member and a chief of the Vice Lord all in one day.
All these guys wins right out of the north at Midway Airport.
His father.
Rice and beans. Okay, kids, we have had to come to an end of this beautiful set.
We are tired.
It's not about this.
This is the inside account of a week that brought the Rainbow Nation to its knees.
Right, essentially.
No.
Hello, everyone. This is the Progressive Mind Show. You are all welcome to this evening's edition of this great platform. This is your only and number one community building platform in the world. We're excited that God has given us the opportunity to come your way again. It's July 6th, 2022, and we are here to talk about our community and some of the things that are pertinent to us. This edition is a special one. It's a continuation of the episodes that we've been holding on this platform, which is the Diaspora Convo, the Diaspora Conversation. And we have more than five people this evening who are going to be engaging. These are all folks from the African diaspora community. And so Captain Mike will give us a segment. Right after that, we'll go to our guest and continue the conversation. If you're watching us on Facebook and YouTube, please help share the feed so we can get this conversation going. Captain Mike, please take it from here. Right after your segment, we shall get into it. Please go ahead.
All right. Right now, we're looking at 80 degrees at Midway Airport. Winds are out of the northeast at just about 10 miles an hour.
The normal high around this time of the year is about 85 degrees. Let's take a look at what we're going to get into for the rest of tonight. Get down to about a low of about 70 degrees, light winds out of the east. We're going to keep those east winds for the next part of the week. It's going to be a really nice week. A possibility of some showers and maybe a stray thunderstorm tomorrow night. High about 80 tomorrow. Friday and Saturday, 75 high. Maybe a shower or two here late Friday. Going to get a little bit windy late on Friday night. Saturday's going to be nice. Sunday, we have another nice day, mostly sunny skies. Winds are going to stay out of the east. Move to the south on Monday. It's going to be a little bit muggy, 87 degrees, and maybe a stray shower or two. Tuesday, another nice day, high of 83. And Wednesday, we're going to have mostly sunny skies, high of 82 degrees. And in sports today, looks like our White Sox defeated the Twins 9-8. Thank goodness there. The Cubs took out the Brewers 2-1. And in the Kofasa Cup, we had Lesotho 2, Malawi 1, Eswatini 3, and Mauritius 0 in the Kofa Cup. And now we go to our health and fitness report. Well, since it's summer, which we love here at the Progressive Mind Show, we want to cool off at the lake or at a pool, but we have to follow some water safety tips here from the Red Cross. One, make sure that you don't swim alone. Have a swim buddy, a partner to help keep you safe. Don't leave children unsupervised. Wear a designated life vest. Swim in only designated areas, and teach your children to ask first if they can go near the water or in the water, and let you know when they're finished playing, and keep an eye on them to make sure everyone is safe in the water. So we want to have a healthy, happy, safe summer. And with that, Sina, we're going to go back to you.
Thank you, brother, for the brief report on weather, health, and sports. We really appreciate you. I hope that you've been enjoying summer so far. This weekend was good, man, with Africa Fest of Life, with the one that they had at Jackson Park. That was awesome. I don't know if you were able to attend any of these, man.
I usually do, but this year, believe it or not, I just finally got hit with the COVID. So I'm kind of getting over it now. So I'm feeling better. So the rest of my summer is going to be awesome.
All right, my brother. Looking forward to a lot summer fun times and fun activities with you. Next week Saturday is the event. So if you don't have flight plans or work schedules, whatever, make sure you don't miss this and get the word out to your friends, bro.
I will do.
And actually, we're going to be having that type of conversation this evening. So you want to stay tuned and invite your friends to it, okay?
Absolutely. I already have.
And I want to have your take, actually. I really want to have your take on some of the things we're going to be talking about. So we're looking forward to it.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much again, Captain Mike. We will looking forward to seeing you. We will go straight to our guests. We have Samantha, Cecilia, Jifa, and who else? PMARTT. Dominic will be joining us in a little bit. But before we continue the show, I want to introduce our guest. We have Cecilia. Cecilia, hold on 1 second. Just want to make sure I get the name right. Cecilia. You know, Nigerian names, you take a pause and then you break and then you move forward. So Cecilia Hezekiah Onyukwe. She's a business analyst. She resides in Chicago. Cecilia, you're welcome to the show. We have you on mute.
Hi, how are you?
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. And then next to her, we have Jifa. Okay, now I'm gonna go with the one we have. It's just Mrs. Scholastica Amekuji. She's BSN RN. She's also the CEO of NSA Limited. NSA LLC. I'll call her Jifa, and she'll tell us the reason why I call her Jifa in a little bit. Jifa, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And then we have PMARTT. PMARTT is an international artist. PMARTT, you're welcome to the show. Your mic is on mute.
Thank you, Alinko, for having me.
Brilliant. And then next to PMARTT is Samantha Guerrero. Samantha, welcome once again.
Hi, thank you. It's actually Spanish. It's Guerrero.
Guerrero. Sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now that we have Guerrero and Unyukwe out of the way. we wanna get to know who our special brilliant guests this evening are. We'll start with Cecilia as we had. Cecilia, we know you're a business analyst, but our audience may want to know a little bit of background of who you are. So if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. So my name is Cecilia Hezekiah Anukwe. I am Nigerian American. My dad is from Abia State. My mom is from here in Chicago. We came across one another at a podcast event, so that's really cool. So I often do talks on different podcasts. I co-host on a few podcasts and just really love engaging in these conversations that I really believe that we need to be having. And I like to have those with like-minded people. So I do this a little bit of everywhere. It's my thing.
No, thank you so much for sharing. Jifa, please.
Thank you again for having me. My name is Scholastica Jifa Amekuji. I go by Jifa for short. I live in Chicago, come from Ghana. I have my whole family here. I mean, my husband and kids are here. I have 3 kids. I'm a nurse, and I own nurse staffing agency. So we're into staffing, nursing into hospitals, into nursing homes, assisted living, whatsoever place you need a nurse, we're happy to help. And I'm happy to have these conversations because I have encountered some of these issues that we'll be discussing here in my line of business, and I'm more than happy to engage.
Brilliant. And then PMARTT, please.
Thank you, Alinko. Hi, everyone. My name is PMARTT. I am a recording artist, international artist from West Africa, Central Africa, Cameroon. And I represent the diaspora here in Chicago. I live here, born at home. And I do music, as you guys know.
Well, yes, as all of us know, hopefully those who don't know today would get to know more about PMARTT. And essentially, so Cecilia, you were born and bred here. Wait, did we get to Samantha? I don't think so.
So my name is Samantha. I go by Sam. Born and raised Chicago. My mom was born Michigan. My dad was born in Mexico. So I come from a Black and Mexican background, very different upbringing from each of their sides. So I think this was a great opportunity for us to discuss coming from a multicultural background and seeing, very polar opposite sides of opinions on Black issues and issues that affect Black people. So I'm excited to be here.
I am very excited for this opportunity, and I really want to thank you all for making the show this evening. Let's start with Cecilia. You've been buzzing for some time now, and I like the energy. Cecilia, you were born here to Nigerian parents. You're African American. When you walk down the streets, typically in the city of Chicago, and you see Africans, and typically when you see an African, you can identify us. We have a swag of, we have the African swag. Don't shake your head now. We have our own swag.
No, we do.
We have this flavor on us. Now, Let me ask you, without you identifying yourself and vice versa, do you feel the energy of that African assuming that, oh, there go an African American, there go this person, do you feel that type of energy when you meet Africans who do not know that you're African too, or partly African?
Yes. So it's something that it's a little game of mine, because at my actual job, the one that pays my bills, there are a lot of African drivers. And so I know I look I look very American because my mom was born and raised here in Chicago. So my mom is Black, she's African American, and my dad is Nigerian. So I look more American. And when I can notice that someone is from Africa, and I'm almost really good at identifying if they're even from Nigeria, I playfully just ask, like, oh, I hear your accent, like, oh, where are you from? and they assume that I'm just American. So they're like, oh, I'm from Africa. And I'm like, yes, Africa's a continent. So where are you from in Africa? And then that's when the conversation starts. They're like, what do you mean? Like, you're asking too many questions. What do you mean? And then so when they tell me, I love to engage in conversation. It just, usually if I come across someone, recently he was from Yoruba. He's Yoruba. And I was like, oh, I'm Igbo. Like, we're right next to each other. And he was really excited. But originally engaging into the conversation, people are usually very hesitant, or they kind of almost brush me off. And it's like, no, like, we can have a conversation. It's fine. So it's always a very interesting engagement.
Encounter. So you were saying that when you meet fellow Africans, you kind of feel like they're trying to avoid you because they assume that you're African American. So they have some kind of not so positive attitude towards you.
Yeah, because I mean, unfortunately, people sometimes approach it from a space of ignorance, right? They just don't know.
Yeah, I got you. I just wanted to establish that. And a great point that you made. Now, first of all, is there any way we can, how do you identify an African? Because we're all Black people, and the assumption is that, well, we blend in, and so even the police or the law enforcement, whatever, cannot tell who's an African. So that's why there's this conversation of us working together, because it doesn't matter where you're from. And so, but you are still able to identify who an African American is, who is African, who is Caribbean, and of course Latino people. They are lighter than us, so we easily identify them. But how do you identify who is a Latino, who's a Mexican, and who is African or African American? Jifa, you want to tell us your experience, if you are able to identify, and if you are, what are the things that you pick to help you in this?
I also have similar stories, but it's actually similar experiences that is actually the opposite. People see me and they think I'm African American, and so when they hear my accent, they're like, wait, I hear an accent, where are you from? And so we all do get that. And it's kind of interesting to spot someone in the store and just say, that person is Nigerian, or that person is Ghanaian. And today I had an experience. I stopped by the store just before the show, and a lady complimented on my sandals. She was like, oh, those are cute shoes. And I could hear that she was Togolese. And so I spoke Ewe to her, and I was like, are you Togolese? And she was very excited to, see me ask and be spot on with where she comes from, because I could hear a French accent. So I think that the accent is a giveaway. And if you're African and familiar with some of the accents, you can tell if there is a French intonation to the English or the way the person talks. Just like here in Chicago, you can tell if someone from New York comes, you can tell, oh, probably from New York.
But before you say a word to that person, though, are there things that we are able to pick?
The look.
The look. Okay, the look. Now, is that just the physical appearance, or you're talking about the whole ambience?
The look, the demeanor is one too.
The
demeanor of the person can tell you that they're African. The way they carry themselves. It's not to say it's a negative thing, but we carry ourselves differently. Even no matter how elite you are, it's you would just give yourself away, and we're different. We see things differently. We are more friendlier, and unfortunately sometimes too we look mean, but we're really not mean. Like, we have a resting bitch face, where we use that to guard off unwanted, and we are a bit more serious. And so sometimes you can pick on all that and say, that's an African,
You're a bit more serious. PMARTT, how do you identify who's an African, Caribbean, or African American? Even without talking to them.
For me, it's I can't really, it's not unless I hear the accent or maybe the way you dress. And as Africans, we have this most Africans, like Nigerians, Ghanaians, and Cameroonians, most people would tell me, "Oh yeah, I just recognize you as an African because you have a cut right here. Like we have this little, I think we have something on our cheek. I don't know if you guys noticed that most men have like something right
I think
here.
there's a little glitch over there. But while we wait for his feed to reboot, let's hear from Samantha.
Oh, my feed is messing up.
Okay, we got you now. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
you were
so
on. We lost you on that little thing here.
well, yeah. Some people would probably say that you have a cut here, so they can easily identify you.
Okay.
And also your accent, the way you dress. For the most part, people just hear my accent, you know. And to be honest, it makes me happy that they can do that. That they can identify me as different from the crowd.
Have you been in very
most of the time? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, have you been in very uncomfortable situations where you felt that because of your heritage or because of your identity as an African, some other African Americans who you encountered, or even Latino folks, kind of treated you in a very negative way or gave you some type of body language that was not comfortable? Have you been in those type of situations?
Yeah, especially in situations where someone asks you, "Where are you from?" You know, maybe you go in and you say you want that. You know, you just say you want to use a bathroom or something, and somebody says, "Where are you from?" And you get taken back by that. You know, it's like, why does that matter where I'm from? You know, how did you even figure that out? And then they say the accent or sometimes the way you look. Depending on the situation, you can be offended by that because it's, you know, what you can hear the accent. Obviously, you hear I'm foreign. So why do you need to know? And then some people are not like curious in a good way. They're more like curious. I've had a job where I had a client, and the client asked me, he asked me, was I in the jungle? You know, and
Wow.
This is me in Chicago.
Wow.
I'm in Chicago. So I see one, I was taken back by that one because I'm Black and I'm in Chicago where it's predominantly like violent, you know. I mean, it's known as a violent state. And then being African at that, you know, I had a sort of like a triple entendre with that jungle word. So I didn't appreciate that. So I have moments. I've had many moments.
You've had moments. Wow. So essentially, the reason why we emphasizing on these things is that the stories are real, and as a people, we cannot continue in this manner. We can't continue in this fashion because it doesn't really exist in the other ethnic groups or the other races. Because we've all worked in corporate in environments, in other settings where you see how other races that are outside the African diaspora or that are outside the Black race, you see how they coordinate and how they help each other and relate to each other. And we hear stories and we hear, you know, scenarios. So, but these things are very prevalent within the African diaspora. So reason why we're having this conversation, if you just joined us, is almost 6:30 Central Time, and you can follow this show on Twitter. It's live there, Facebook, and then YouTube. And when you come on, please share it. We're currently live on radio, Afro Radio, which is based out on the East Coast. Afro Radio is an online Pan-African radio station. We're being carried live on that platform as we speak. And let's go to Samantha, please.
So I think personally being American and also being somebody with an African-American mother who's very light-skinned, and she has more red hair and light brown eyes, and she was always misidentified as a child and as a young adult. I grew up, my mom was adopted, and my family is all African American, and they're all people who have, you know, different culinary and artistic and, you know, different educations that they followed. And she grew up very clearly seeing that she was treated very differently than her sister, who was dark-skinned, and her nieces who, you know, they didn't have her light-skinned features. And so as I grew up, she explained and sort of prepared me and taught me, you know, that's not something that you should thrive in. It's a privilege, and what you do with it is very important. So you need to always identify when you see that mistreatment and you see that people treat you differently, even if they don't understand that it's wrong, that needs to be your voice, and you need to educate yourself. So being in I didn't say it earlier, I work specifically with beauty as my full-time job. I work in beauty industry. So I've learned a lot about not just the skincare products, but also different skin and how skin reacts and how people identify beauty and how people identify something that's safe and something that is attainable. And I also work in Latin dance. We have a studio that we focus on Latin dances, but all Afro-Cuban roots and African roots. And we give a lot of education on it. So we have people come in the studio, and until they speak, you don't know where they're from. I've had, you know, teachers come in the room and I think, oh, he's got to be African American. No, he's Cuban. He's Dominican. You know, he doesn't come from Africa. He comes from Cuba, which of course ancestors came from Africa. But so he's not directly, or they're not directly, you know, easy to identify. But I think, you know, sort of almost opposite, I think, of what people, I think, expect is that when you see these different diasporas come together, especially in a room like a studio, it's very easy to identify who really wants to be there when we start talking, because we start every lesson with a conversation. You need to know where these moves come from. You need to know the roots, and you need to pay respect to the religion and to the origins of these movements, because if you don't, you're not only disrespecting yourself, you're disrespecting a culture and a people, and we have no tolerance for it. And a lot of times it's people kind of look around the room and they go, okay, you know what? Maybe this is not the class for me. I want to have fun. And they don't realize that it's a blissful ignorance. They want to have fun and be creative and be goofy. They don't want to actually identify the fact that, you know, we're all here from different backgrounds, but the movements that we're learning are African, and we have to give credit to that. We have to pay respect to that. You need to know what it is you're doing before you do it. You wouldn't get in a car and drive a car, so why would you get in my dance studio and goof around and be fun with this dance movement and not realize that now you're disrespecting a religion, an orisha, a god? You know, you would never do that in a Catholic church, so you will show the same respect here.
Wow, that's a beautiful perspective. Thanks for sharing, Samantha. I don't know if anybody else has something to contribute to that, but before we do so, I want to introduce Queen Dr. Peterson. She's in the house. She is African American. She's an international supermodel. Go ahead, please, and introduce yourself in a little bit. I don't know. I'm confusing. I call her Dominic, but I'm looking at Queen Dr. Peterson. So I'm torn between the two. Which one should I go with? So go ahead, Queen Peterson. Go ahead.
Yes, and yes, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Sina, Alinko, and all of your guests, and all of those who are within the hearing of this broadcast. It's wonderful to be here at the helm of what we see happening on today. It's just a coming together, a reckoning, and you know, we're greater together as a diaspora than we are divided. And yes, I am an international queen. For a platform, Supermodels Unlimited. I also have a local title, Miss Illinois Icon. I am a teacher for Chicago Public Schools. And I'm so happy I'm finally graduating this month with my master's in instructional leadership, so I can move forward and become a principal for CPS, probably not a public school principal, but I would like to be a private type of parochial school that's partnered with CPS, because we have agendas that is a little more comprehensive when it comes to culture and when it comes to esteem, especially of our African American young men. And so I'm looking at some things on the table here, and I'm just taking one step at a time. And I want to thank the community for cheering me on as Miss Illinois icon for Supermodels Unlimited.
Thank you so much. You know what she just did? She realized that she had missed part of the show, so she wanted to catch on with us. So she, but that was brilliant. Thank you for giving us that background. Jifa, you said okay. I think Jifa. I don't know if we can get Jifa still. You said something about Africans were different and Africans were serious. Do you think that? First of all, why do you say that? And I know I wanted to give you all the opportunity to respond to each other's comment. If I don't give you the opportunity, please alert me, because sometimes I may miss it. So please feel free to do so. This is our platform. It's freestyle. Jifa, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just fixing my glasses. Could you repeat that?
You said Africans are serious. Like we look serious, or we come off as serious. Now somebody will hear that and it may sound vague to them, but I want you to explain why you say that. Because it sounds like other people are not serious.
I'm going to speak
right?
for myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak for myself. From my perspective, usually when I'm in the store, I'm focused on what I'm doing. Like all my attention and my focus is on what I'm in to get. Mm-hmm. And so I'm typically not looking around or playing around or like expecting that approach. And so even when I'm talking to, I may say, hi, how are you? How's your day? But I'm still like so focused that, sometimes our facial expressions are very, I don't want to use the word serious again, but it looks uninviting sometimes. And I learned this recently that unfortunately, like for those of us in Ghana, we are in the tropics and the sun is so hot. Sometimes people are always like this, have this,
squinting,
face, expression, like trying to guard, the sun's
direct,
and so people wear this over so many years that it becomes part of them, and they don't even realize that they have a frown. And it's not because they actually have a frown, it's because they're like either have this facial expression so long that it's part of them, or they're so focused, and so we look very serious, apart from us actually being very serious about things we do and very passionate, like we're on a mission. Most of the time we have come so many miles and we're on a mission, so it's like I'm going in, I'm getting this done, and and then you have somebody approach you and they want to have a conversation because they hear an accent, or and sometimes it can be offensive, like my brother just said. If it depends on the demeanor, the approach, sometimes it can be really offensive, because if we're in a room with Caucasians and you see they all have one skin type, they're all light skinned, they may have various accents, but nobody asks them, where are you from? As soon as you open your mouth to talk, everybody's interested in knowing, where are you from? It could be positive and
it could be negative. Do you get where are you from other ethnic groups, other races, or it's mainly within the African diaspora community?
You get it from all races. Yeah.
Does it make you feel more uncomfortable, even so, from an African or an African American?
It depends again on the situation. If it's from a fellow African.
Yeah, if somebody says, I hear an accent, where are you from? So because I get that too. White people ask me that. I don't interact with a lot with Asians, but Mexicans don't, Latino folks don't ask me that. But white people will ask me, African Americans will ask me. So and I take it differently, but I'm asking you as an African, if a white person versus an African American ask you, I hear an accent, where are you from? How do you receive the two?
If it's an African American, depending on the situation again, most of the time it's from curiosity.
Okay.
Where are you from? I want to know, which country in Africa are you from? And it's very recently I'm coming across African Americans who know that Africa is not a continent. It's not a country, but a continent. Unfortunately, in my early days of being in America, I would find people was like, "Oh, you speak African?" And I'm like, "There's no language like African," So it's from a place of curiosity, they wanting to know more. And even this afternoon, I had a lady who was like, "I hear an accent. Where are you from?" I told her I'm from Ghana. She's like, "Which part of it? Is this the West?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Can you take me with you?" I'm like, "Sure." So such conversations can be pleasant.
Yes. Cecilia, I'll come to you in a little bit, but quickly, PMARTT, have you gotten that type of the same question to Jifa, and how does it make you feel when an African asks you have an accent, where you're from, and then a white person asks you?
It doesn't make any difference, I don't think.
To you, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it make a difference.
Awesome. In the African communities, let me put it that way. We have the different countries that make up the African community in Chicago. What have you heard, or what do you think are some of the nuances when it comes to how our brothers and sisters in the African American community think or say about us? Some of the stigmas and some of the stereotypes that you may have heard and not heard, but that exist in the African community. Do you want to share some with us, Jifa or PMARTT?
Yeah. I can. Are you saying some of the phrases that
exactly? Some of the phrases, what Africans think that African Americans imagine or assume of us.
Yeah, I grew up in a home, the African home, obviously, and I think my perspective is that I have a dual understanding of both cultures because the time that I spent here.
No, so you do have a dual a perfect understanding. What I'm saying is that, what do you hear our other Africans say that African Americans are assuming of us? What do you hear others, not you?
Okay, well, basically our parents, where we grew at home, the perspective was that, African Americans would probably think of us as, dumb or, just lost. When we first came here, that's the treatment that we got, For example, our neighbors, our neighbor, when we moved on the south side, they're Black. When we first moved in, they thought that we were some, I guess, uneducated Africans. And then it's funny because months later, the man actually came out the house and greeted us. He always greeted us from a distance. So he came out, he was like, I'm really happy to have you guys as neighbors. And he was so honest, brutally honest. And he said, I actually thought you guys were some, a group of Africans that come and make noise all the time but you guys actually have it, like you're organized, you have your things together. And we were like, we didn't know how to take that, so that's how we saw that. That's how we always thought Americans thought of us, less, they thought less of us. But when they see you do something that's out of the norm, they're more shocked than anything. So with people being shocked of the way that we lived, the way we contain, organized, just the way we are. Just somebody said that, like, the way we carry ourselves, you can easily tell we're Africans. And that is what made him accept us as neighbors. He used to always close his door, shut his window every time he sees us outside. But it turned from that to, hey, how you guys doing? He wants to know more about our culture. He smells our food. You guys cook really well. We didn't know how to take that, but we knew that's how they saw us.
You would always smell an African food no matter the distance. I don't know why, Jifa, you will have to tell us the secret. But I want to hear, there's a powerful point that Samantha made, and I want to go back to it. But before that, Cecilia, I know you haven't spoken in a while. Dr. Queen, Dr. Peterson, Dominic. Let me just say Dominic. Dominic, would you permit me to just say Dominic so I'm not struggling? No, your response to what PMARTT just said, quickly. Your audio is muted. Okay, while she's getting herself situated, Cecilia, go ahead. You want to respond to some of the things that have been shared so far?
Yeah, I think before African Americans became more aware of African culture, before it became popular, before it became mainstream, I know when I was in grammar school, a lot of what I got were just like really mean and really disrespectful, right? Like I'll just flat out say it. Like it was like African booty scratcher, or people would like do the with assimilating like the yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like in reference to my dad, or like my dad would like line the grass with a machete, and they would think that like my dad was like literally killing chickens in the backyard, and it was just like in my house I always smelled like stock fish because my dad always
again. Can you give us that expression again?
It was you know the with the like they would do that, and I'm like, what are you doing? Or the noise where it's like, no, we speak English. Like I don't understand what's happening. So it was really mean growing up. Whereas now I think the contrast is everyone's curious, right? Because Afrobeats is so popular. Wizkid and Burna Boy is so popular. So now it's I think you guys mentioned it before, how we carry ourselves. And somebody in my college class said that it's because I know where I'm rooted. I know where I'm from. I can go to Nigeria. I can go to my dad's compound and I can put my feet where my dad grew up, and I'm not lost. And it's a level of confidence that comes with that, where it's, even though if you don't know that I am Nigerian American, you kind of can hint that I'm not just American. It's a level of confidence that we do carry that's very distinguishable. But yeah, so it went from people being really mean and making fun of Africans in a way that was really disrespectful, to now everybody thinks it's cool and popular, and they want to, they want to know where they come from. They're like, take me back with you. And I'm like,
it's very interesting that people of the same color and people of the same heritage have to, in 2022, have to be dealing with this, because in this era is when China, America, Russia, European countries are sending rockets to the moon, taking people to the moon, literally, and we have to be dealing with, how you look and how you smell, and it's our story. It's difficult, but that's why we're here, and we've made strides as a people, no doubt. But it's just the situation. But we also can change our own situation and our destiny, and that's why we do some of the things that we do. Queen Dominic, you have listened a little bit to the conversation. I wanted to get your feedback. You can put together Cecilia and PMARTT's comments and then sum it up for us. Please make sure you're not taking a lot of our time. I know you're a teacher, but this is not your classroom.
Yes, absolutely. And let's get the technology together also with that.
It's good. Yeah, it's good now.
It comes down to education, and a part of education is exposure, right? So the education has to be accurate, it has to be valid, and it has to be objective. Can't be biased. It can't be full of lies. And sadly, because the world is getting smaller, it seems. But heretofore, when I was younger and years back, the world just seemed so large. And whatever they told us about the other 6 continents, we just believed them because we were just on the block, y'all, And they took that as propaganda to pad their pockets. Do you hear me? They weren't concerned about the sociological impact on lying about whole cultures of people on other continents. They weren't concerned about that. They weren't concerned about the historical impact that would have on future relationships between countries. All they were thinking about was how can we exploit the ignorance of the United States, really of this continent here in North America. How can we exploit their ignorance? And I just gotta say, we ain't just, English. We are the people that are not really bilingual. I'm just going to tell you, we really not.
If you say we, who are you referring to?
Americans. Okay, the whole melting pot. It's just like the American dollar, the English language. But now in this season, the world is getting smaller, and we're starting to. COVID was a real precursor to us understanding, hey, you better find out who your neighboring continent is and stop listening to propaganda. Because guess what? If you want to survive this what would you call it? Plague. This plague is worldwide. So guess what? We found out that, hey, the other 6 continents, they are more like us than unlike us. Now, all of us, God has a way of making us understand you are your brother's keeper. And I understand they may be far on the other continent, but guess what? You all breathe the same H2O. You got the same blood running through your veins, right? You all have similar hopes, aspirations, and dreams. You're just a mosaic, a diaspora. Right?
Okay.
Because
let me interject. Thank you so much. Powerful points, Queen.
Yeah.
Let me say this. Do you feel sometimes, or have you ever felt, as before you got to this level of consciousness, have you ever felt at any point that Africans or Caribbeans look down on African Americans?
You speaking to me?
I'm speaking to the Queen, and you're the only Queen on this.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Okay.
sorry. We have 3 queens. We have 3 queens. 4 queens, and including you. I'm sorry. No,
I'm the one with representing Supermodels Unlimited. But listen, absolutely, of course. But I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I spent time studying at a university that was the American Psychological Association certified. So they're like the godfather of psychology in regards to certifications. What I understand is this: it's a reaction. It's a form of protection. That's what we do as humanity. If we feel conjected upon, if we feel looked down upon, or we think someone thinks that we are not up to par, automatically we're going to come back with a type of protection. And so one will inflate themselves. I don't care what their race is or who's pitted against whom. This is human nature. And when it comes to the African and Black American experience, yes, I did see that at play, but I wasn't confused. I understood where there was coming from, because I'm so-called native here now, and my African friends are flying God knows how many hours to get in thousands of dollars. Now it's $3,000 for me to get to Nigeria, and I got to try to figure out how to get over there this summer because I'm supposed to speak. And
what has an African done to you that made you feel looked down upon?
Sometimes it's just in the look. A picture says 1,000 words, but you know what they were doing? They were protecting themselves for what they were taught was my attitude. That's all it was. And we do that repeatedly in all types of and sorts of varying situations. And yes, it plays out in race also. It was just a form of protection. But I know that because I got a whole degree in clinical psych.
Thank you.
But it's up to me to teach others, though.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of people don't. Yeah, go ahead, Jiva.
Who? Cecilia or
Jiva. I'm sorry. I think I saw two people, but Jifa, go ahead. And I'll be biased. Jifa is from Ghana, so I'll give it to Jifa, and then we'll do the Nigeria guy.
It's okay. So, yeah, I agree with Queen that it's a protective mechanism. When I came to America first, my own family told me so many, it's like, don't be friends with these Americans. They don't like us. They're rowdy. I had so many things, but I am that type of person who wants to get to know people for who they are. And there was one time I brought a friend home to a family's house, and she was outright rude to her. I was so embarrassed. And so I agree that it's
who did you bring home?
I agree that it's.
You said you brought somebody home.
It's what we are taught. Either
Jifa,
learned in school.
Hold on, Jifa. You said you brought somebody home and somebody was rude. Can you explain that part?
Yeah, I brought a friend home and she was African American from school, college, and my family, African. Was very rude to her. And it was very obvious. Like, it wasn't even, pretending. She wasn't even pretending. She just had to know, look, I'm not comfortable about you being in my home. And so, and I don't fault her. I don't fault her because it's what she's taught. She has learned over the years, either in school or experiences. But then again, it's human nature. It's one person can spoil it for the other. But it's exposure. It is your own personal education, your own principles. What makes you different? Me, Jifa, I would want to get to know you, Alinko, or you, Cecilia, for who you are. I don't judge. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I would have instances where I will have some prejudice, but I try to check myself, and try to get the people and give them other chances to prove themselves.
Excellent. Excellent. Jifa, do you think that generally Africans, or a lot of Africans, tend to be judgmental when it comes to...
We all are.
Okay.
Whether African Americans or Africans from Africa, we all are. One way or the other. Sometimes, my husband was telling me one time he took okra soup to work, and at lunchtime he couldn't even eat it. He had to bring it home because everybody, not only were they curious to know, they're like, some people think it's nasty, why are you eating with your hands? And so some of these things, it's like you have to be open-minded to know that, okay, these people use their hands. And I bet you eating okra soup with the cutlery, it tastes way different from eating it with your hands. It gives you a different, it changes it. So these are the people, this is their culture. You have to be open. But unfortunately, like I said, Dr. Queen, it's the education, it's the exposure. How many different people have you seen? Unfortunately, and I'm going to be real, in a corporate setting, a lot more Caucasians are open to cultures than Africans because they are more educated. I don't know whether it's right to say they are more educated, but they have, some of them in the corporate environment get to meet other cultures and experience them. And so they don't typically have a lot of questions like African Americans. African Americans usually are comfortable. They're in Chicago and they haven't even been downtown before. They just love their own little safe, environment, and they feel so comfortable. They're afraid, and sometimes when I get close to these people, our sisters and brothers in the diaspora, the questions they ask you just realize they really just don't know. And in May, I was in Ghana with some friends from America, and I took them, instead of staying in the hotel, I took them on the streets, like what we would do, like the natives would do. And they appreciated it so much. They were like, we've been in Ghana before, but we never even, thought that you guys lived like this. We ate on the street. Let them feel like, be safe. It doesn't hurt. Nobody will bite you.
Thank you so much.
Do it again.
Beautiful. I know Samantha haven't spoken yet. Samantha, any comments so far?
Cecilia wanted to talk.
Cecilia, go ahead.
It's okay. We can pass it to Samantha because she hasn't spoken.
Yeah, so we'll come back. Samantha, your thoughts or comment on anything that has been, anything we've discussed so far?
Yeah, you know what PMARTT said it really stood out to me, because when I was in middle school, mind you, I graduated middle school in 2010, so I'm young, and I have a very raw understanding of kind of what modern day is looking like for this change of ignorance. And I think a lot of what what Queen was saying is that it's this education, and the world is getting smaller, and we're learning more. When I was in middle school, we had cell phones, but we didn't have like the internet on your phone. And I remember there being a kid who transferred, who was African. I think he was Nigerian, and he was so sweet, but he was so quiet. He never spoke. And every time he spoke, everybody would start not mocking him, but they would say what he'd said back. They're like, oh, and it was like this big creative thing. And then it became like science experiment. Can you say this? Can you say that? And it was, oh my God, I love your accent. It was this big thing. And then of course there were the kids who would bully. And I'm like, I can remember being in those classes, and he'd be sitting there laughing, and we'd all be laughing. I'm like, no, you know what? He was not comfortable. He was sitting in a room of 30 kids. What's he going to do? Argue? And then getting to high school, and all of a sudden it was a 360. And if anybody came in the school who was transferring in, who was from Africa, anywhere, it didn't matter. Oh, she's African. They got money. That was the first thing everyone said. They have money. Oh yeah. Oh girl, they don't play around. And it was like, all of a sudden there was this shift of, no, being African is nothing close to what we thought it was. This is a whole different level of
Unfortunately, we're having a glitch over there.
We're having.
Can you hear?
Oh yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, to wrap it up, it was like, if you want to date a man who's going to marry you, date an African man. It was this like elite royalty that I think people finally recognized and appreciated for my generation. And it was like, okay, you know what? What do you want to eat for lunch? Do you want to eat the school chicken sandwich, or do you want to eat what Sandele brought because his mom throws down? And there was this really beautiful shift. But again, my school, I grew up in Oak Park. And if you've ever heard about Oak Park High School, there's a documentary about the segregation in the school. So the African, kids and the African American kids, and a lot of us that were mixed, we all sat together. And it was our own culture, sitting at these tables, having lunch for an hour and talking and communicating and learning about each other. So, it breaks my heart when you look back and you think, God, I was so ignorant. I was absolutely one of those African-American kids who was so clueless about how this was not funny. This was bullying in a way. And then learning a couple of years later, oh my God, that was so wrong. And now I can have an adult conversation and have a relationship and be very mindful, because what's the point of a mistake if you don't learn from it?
Powerful, man. Thank you so much. You guys are dropping a lot of knowledge. We really appreciate it. If you're watching the show, this is the Progressive Minds platform. We are the #1 community building show in the world. We have conversations such as these and create events to walk our talk. And so we have one coming up July 16th, which is next week, Sunday. In a little bit, I'll be showing a video of that event. We'll also touch on it a little bit during this show. It is 4 minutes past 7 p.m. Central Time. And if you want to call in, the number is 815-277-5047. 815-277-5047. We are a 501c3 organization. Feel free to advertise or sponsor us with your products in terms of advertisement anytime. You can reach me at info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. info.progressivemindshow@gmail.com. Let me take that again. info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. Our guests this evening are Mrs. Scholastica. Okay. But We all call it Jifa. Jifa, I would like you to tell our audience the meaning of your name. Cecilia is also here with us. We have Queen, Dr. Peterson. PMARTT is an international artist. Samantha Guerrera. Guerrera. Did I say it right? Guerrera. Okay.
Guerrero.
All right. Cecilia, please go ahead and make that comment that you had, and then we will go back to. I want Queen to respond to a comment that Jifa made, but please go ahead first, Cecilia.
There's been a lot of conversations.
Yes.
But yes, I've actually had opposite experiences where my Nigerian side of my family were the most judgmental, actually, to the point that it sometimes caused a lot of friction, because on my Nigerian side, the values are much different. A perfect example is education, right? We hold high esteem to the medical field, to the lawyers, to the pharmacists and things of that nature, where I am more business oriented and more arts oriented. And as some of my other cousins started to take those different paths, we really felt ostracized out of the community. And a lot of the feedback was, well, oh, Ugo, well, what are you going to do now? Or what are you going to do with that? And, this is that and the other. And even some of my American tendencies, as people would say, like I have a lot of tattoos, right? I recently went to my cousin's traditional wedding where a couple of my aunties were like, just, Ugo, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm 30, I can do whatever I want at this point. and it's taken, but for me, as somebody who, is a part of the family, it was hurting my feelings because I felt like, on top of just some comments that they would say about my mom, or even when I went back home to Nigeria, and they were very surprised that my father kept the culture intact. And it's like, do you eat this? Or, let's try okra soup. And I was like, what do you mean try okra soup? I eat okra. So what do you mean? What are you talking about? And so it's also very interesting in the reverse because my mom is American and my dad grew up in Abia State, but decided to come over here to the States. There's this odd idea that because my dad came over here and on top of that decided to marry an American woman, that my Nigerian culture, that my Igbo culture was somehow lost in that translation, and it actually wasn't. So I'm always actually very offended when people look at me and they're like, oh, you don't know anything about that. And I'm like, my dad is a traditionalist. Like, sir, please, we still break cola nut. We still crack cola nut in the house. Like, don't talk to me. And so it's very interesting to hear that, yes, there is this idea from Black African Americans projected onto Africans. And then the reverse, though, also happens. And for me, as a person who's literally African and American, it's always a very like, oh, well, this kind of hurts my feelings, but it's okay.
Wow.
It's all right.
Wow.
It's interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you again for sharing, Cecilia. Dominic.
Yes.
And Queen. Yes. The comment that I wanted you to respond to is something that I see and hear a lot as an African too, but I want you to respond to it. And Jifa mentioned it, that African Americans somewhat, or some African Americans, it seem as though they don't want to venture out. And I'm not quoting her directly. I'm just paraphrasing what she said. And if I'm wrong, Jifa, please correct me. But the assumption is that some don't like to venture out. They're comfortable in their own zones. That she gave an example of some on the south side, west side, wherever, they have not even ventured to go to downtown. Why is this? If this is a real situation in the African American community, what is that?
Well, it's the result of racism.
Okay.
Clear.
And is it true that African Americans are comfortable in their own little pockets?
Well, yeah, you would. you would feel more comfortable in an environment where you feel safer, especially when, you know, even in the public school systems, we have seen where the money has not been equitably distributed. We have seen where zip codes suffer in squalor because of that specific zip code, which means they're not getting their lion's share of tax support. We see it in housing, redlining. We see it in professional opportunities. It's just we left the African continent in great duress. Then we came here to be slapped in the face. It's just been a hellish ride. So what I can say is, I used to teach in Arizona on the Indian reservation. And what was so striking is that's why they wanted me there. They wanted me there, one, because of my clinical psych background and because of my education background. And my mother was a assistant principal and principal for Chicago Public Schools. And she flew to Arizona to see my native Indian classes. And she was really struck. And even the years that I taught there, I was really struck. Now they have their own unique problems. Like there is a perseveration with drunkenness or something. And that's not typical of our inner city, but the problems with the African-American inner city and the inner city of Native Americans, which are reservations, which is their own fight with the United States government, are so similar that I was able to help those children just like I've helped our children. But it's the result of racism, lack of opportunity. And it was amazing because some of those kids, the only time they left that reservation was when they went to Walmart at the end of the reservation. It might take 45 minutes to drive off the reservation. Well, right there was the super Walmart. And that's as far as many of my students had gone.
Somebody will ask, slavery was 400-500 years ago. And so why are African Americans still using that or mentioning that as part of the situation or part of their problems, why they do some of the negative things that we see?
Oh, yeah. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, a different face. They had this thing called indentured servitude. Okay. You making, it's probably the same salary folk earn in prison today. Maybe a little bit better. It was just another form of slavery, which the slavery occurred right here on this soil. It didn't occur on African soil. It occurred on American soil. Yeah. So, I mean, we have lived with, you can drink from that dirty fountain, you black person, and you white person drink from this shiny fountain. Like we have, and that was
Dominic. So no, powerful points. Yeah. What I'm trying to get to is that a lot of Africans, a lot of people in the African community, Latinx community, Caribbean would say, we are all black people too. Now today we can all drink from the same fountain. However, why are you guys always, now I'm saying this for the purposes of a conversation, why are African Americans always bringing that up, that, oh, this is our problem, oh, slavery, oh, we used to not be able to drink? Why is it still a conversation and an issue in the African American community, which is the reason why some people decide not to progress or do some of the things, the negative things that they do? So,
well, they have this saying called 40 acres and a mule. 40 acres and a mule. See, some people have, and you have to understand also there's a class system. You have African Americans, I'm trying to make sure this is right. You have African American parents who say, look, honey, take lemons and create lemonade, then set up your own stand and get into business with that lemonade. So understand, it's not just along the lines of race, it's also along the lines of class. And so I wanted to bring that to bear. There's also this idea and conjecture of 40 acres and a mule. So it's like the battle is not over, the fight is not over. Now it's not about Africa or Africans. Now it's about Blacks and the United States government. That's where the fight is now, and we're looking for reparations. So now this is the discussion. So either you're gonna provide your own resources for reparations, or you're going to keep on looking for somebody else to say they're sorry. Now, do you want to, I'm not talking about Africa. I'm talking about the wonderful United States of America.
Do you think that America, at this point, great point, and I appreciate, and this is why we have this conversation, the work that
Cecilia wants to respond.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't
Has
get.
been up all along.
Yeah, because I'm looking at two different things, and so I didn't catch that. Cecilia, like I said, always get my attention, okay? Don't let Jifa be your lawyer. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jifa. I was trying to do it politely.
No, this is our platform. You can do it anyhow you want.
So it's very, this is very interesting, and I will try to word this as delicately as possible, where I don't only see the slavery story being used only for I'll say Black Americans, because it's the same conversation that has been interestingly coming up between me and a few of my cousins in regards to the colonization. Because my dad and our family they went through Biafra, and we kind of see parallel things happening. It's just coming from different spaces, right? So you have some Nigerians that their parents went through the situation that was Biafra, and they've come out, and Nigeria as a country, it's still struggling, right? As Africa, as an entire continent, it should be, in my opinion, taking over the world, right? We have the most natural resources, we do the most trade, but the corruption that is there in Africa, in my opinion, that is a result of colonization, arguably can be said to be very similar to slavery, right? And what that did for Black Americans. So for some people, not all people, for some Nigerians, right, you take that and you fuel it, and it's like, I want to do better. I see where we can be, and therefore I'm going to move in that direction, right? Like Dr. Peterson was saying, I take lemonade and I'm going to turn that lemonade into a business. But then in Nigeria, you also still see, poverty and people struggling in the same instance, and still using the excuse of what could have been and what happened and what has not been done for me. And also, to Miss Dr. Peterson's point, the 40 acres and a mule, right? The government is soaking funds. They're not pouring them into the country the way that they should. Same thing for Black Americans, where some Black Americans are like, okay, bet. I don't want my 40 acres and a mule. At this point, it's 2022. I can go get my own 40 acres and a mule and then some, right? I don't need the help of the people who once enslaved us. Whereas there are other Black Americans who are still very much mentally saying, I will not move forward. And it's an act of resistance, because it's like, no, you owe me my 40 acres and a mule because I didn't ask to be a part of any of this foolishness.
Wow.
Anyway.
I'll cut you here. May I come in?
Yeah, come on in.
And I think that this whole conversation we're having is a great one. This excuse, sometimes some of us see it as an excuse, the slavery story being used as an excuse to get off their butt to do something for themselves. But then again, we have to recognize that the slavery wasn't just the physical aspect, but they did it to us mentally. Where I ran an agency, I own a staffing agency, and I was trying to get a contract in one of the hospitals. And my own sister, Black, African American, and we worked on the floor so many years together, and she got, grandfathered in the system. She started her company, and one of the Caucasian leaders in the hospital grandfathered her because of some favors she did for her into the hospital. And this is me asking her, hey, how did you do it? I want to be there too. And we had a meeting, You know, we sat down, we had a meeting. This was like 3 weeks ago. And she literally told me, Scholastica, I can't do this. I'll get in trouble. I know how to get in, but I can't tell you, you know, because they made me sign a document. And this is mental slavery. I mean, I'm not asking you to give me confidential information. I'm just asking you to share with me how you did it, you know? And so they scare you. They put you in a place where you cannot share information.
If you say they scare you, who are you referring to? They.
I'm talking about the system.
Okay.
Especially for minority,
Gotcha.
They put you in a place where you cannot share information with, you know, you will not be able to. They put you in a position where you can't help your fellow black girl.
Right.
You know,
so your point you are making, Jifa, I don't mean to interrupt. The point you are making is that whether you are African, Caribbean, African American, even though we are in here trying to look at each other funny, we are all forging against the same system, or we are all working. We all have the same challenges. That's the problem.
We
and
do.
now, yeah, okay.
We do. They put us against each other, and that's what they did. And that's the most harm. And that's why the story of slavery continues, because it's mental slavery. You know, and so no matter how educated you are, let me give you a typical example.
Quickly, I want PMARTT to come in.
Sorry?
I say quickly because I want PMARTT to respond.
Okay. There was one hospital I worked. The director of nursing was a white woman. Okay. When she left, I don't know why she left. When she left, her ADO and her assistant director was black. They put her in the position because nobody was nobody could hold her position. So she was the only one left. They put her in the position, but they took some of the privileges away. Why? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They give her the same, she's doing the same amount of work, but she doesn't have the same privileges. It's just mental and psychological slavery. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Samantha, I think Samantha and PMARTT wanted to respond.
Go ahead, PMARTT, because I know you've been quiet longer than me.
No, you go ahead. That's fine. If you wanted to talk. I think, I mean, as a whole, not directly responding to a specific person, but as a whole, we I mean, it's sad to say, but we all live in slavery. Even at work, you know, it's interesting because I was having a conversation with one of the colleagues that I work with, and he's actually Caucasian. I'm not sure. Are you guys getting an echo from me?
Yeah, a little bit of echo, but you can go ahead. You're good.
Yeah. So we were talking about, you know, mental slavery, and just work, like new modern day slavery, and that's one of those things that I realize is when people are at work, like we feel not even on a race thing. Maybe it can be race. Maybe depending on the race, you're more scared. But we get scared of people confuse that work is a collaboration with an employer, right? So that's my perspective of a job. My perspective of a job is I'm not working for you. I'm working with you, because in a way, I feel like a freelancer. I feel like I can quit the job. What does a job tell you when you get hired? At will job. So you can leave at any time. They can fire you at any time. So some people are stuck in the mindset that when you're at work, you like at work, like you're a slave. Like it's certain things you're limited. You're limited to your opinion. You're limited to, you know, just generally expressing yourself on how you feel. And I don't believe that. I believe the opposite. I believe that even a manager in a position is held accountable for their behavior, how they act. A worker is held accountable. So why am I saying this? Because this Caucasian manager, one day I was like, what's the contact to the director? You know, because I was in a good relationship with a director who previously left.
The Ghana Criminal Investigations Department.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So basically, he basically tried to stop me from having a contact to the director, the new director, as he felt, I guess maybe that was above my pay rate. But I know, because I know my rights, I know that as a worker, everybody needs direct access to the director. So I tried to ask him why. He asked me why did I need the director's contact, and I told him, I didn't need to tell him that. That was none of his business, pretty much.
Okay.
Because and that's this thing. If he told somebody else who didn't understand, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you the manager." Well, no, I need the director's contact. I don't care what Let me talk to the director, and then he really respects me. He was like, "Man, your perspective of work is really different." I was like, "Yeah, I didn't ask for this job. You guys called me," and I said no 3 times to the director, who really loved me. And my mindset, I was like, look, at that time, I'm doing Uber. I'm like, I'm doing my Uber. Tell me why I should leave my $35 an hour.
Okay. So while we wait for his stream to come back, we would go take a quick. We wanted to take a quick break while we're on this subject. July 16th, we are coming up with the exchange ceremony. Exchange is basically the coming together of the African diaspora and exchanging our culture through dance. It is the foundation of every Black person: dance, food, and our arts. That is the bedrock of our culture as Black people. And in these days, as we struggle and as we are thriving to connect and to understand each other, and one of the issues why we have been segregated and have been the way we have is one of the reasons is us not talking to each other. We don't interact enough, even though we mingle, even though we go to places where we have parties. I mean, we eat and drink. We have not, in my opinion, we have not necessarily connected and made the frantic effort. We have not been too intentional in our talking to each other. And that is why the progressive minds like to create these type of platforms and create events to give us that space. And so July 16th, we're going to be doing that. We're going to have representation from the African community, Caribbean, African American, Latinx, and South America, who all these communities will come and perform a peculiar dance to that community. And as we watch these moves, we can then see the similarity and the connection to one heritage, which is Africa. And this is coming 16th July, which is next week, Sunday. It doesn't end there. Our culture and our beauty is not only that, it's also our fashion. And so we're going to have a cultural fashion show. In addition to that, we're going to appreciate people who have worked and are still working to uplift folks in our communities. We're going to award them. And the crown of that, the highlight of everything we're going to do that day. Now we're standing food. We're going to eat and drink before all of this. Okay, so it's a must. Anytime Africans or Black people meet, the variety of cuisines. But the high point of this event, July 16th, is the coronation of Reverend Jesse Jackson. This man is a king already. His life's work shows it. And so we are coming out from Africa to confer what he already is and what is already worked and toiled for. And so that is our gratitude as Africans to the African American community, doing it through one of their gatekeepers, who is in the person of Reverend Jesse Jackson. So you're going to see local chiefs from Chicago representing different African countries who are going to be at this event to coronate Reverend Jesse Jackson. It's going to be a very beautiful traditional event. And we are blessed to have a king all the way from Ghana who is coming to confer on him this title, in addition to the local chiefs here. This is how we show and embrace our culture to the world. And this is how we celebrate each other, because the humanity of Africans and Black people is the humanity of the world. And so join us July 16th at the Rainbow Push headquarters. Rainbow Push headquarters. Get your tickets now at Eventbrite, because very soon you may not have the opportunity to get that ticket. Once you run out, you may not be able to get in. So get your tickets at Eventbrite so you can secure your seat for that great event. I haven't even spoken about some of the dignitaries that are coming. We have a queen from South Africa, queen for the first Haitian American African queen. She was coronated in Nigeria. She's coming. We have the queen from Congo who's going to be here. We have dignitaries from Congo and Haiti who are all coming to this historic event in the city of Chicago. Now, having said this, let's take a quick look at something that we created for this event, and I'm going to have to show you, show all of you. Whilst we look for this, I would like to say that if you want to ring into the show, the number is 815-277-5047. Actually, the number is right on the screen. And so, okay, I think we have that out of the way. We can get the video playing now. Okay, join our second annual celebration of beauty and humanity on July 16th. It's a Saturday, next week Saturday. Did I say Sunday earlier? Next week Saturday. Reception start at 4 p.m. Show start exactly at 6 p.m. No African time, exactly at 6 p.m. We are going to begin the show. The king is arriving sometime next week, and we'll be sharing more information on our social media. Let's talk about, I want us to have, let's touch briefly. We have a few minutes to wrap up. Let's touch briefly on the way forward. But before that, Samantha made a very powerful point was at the beginning of the show. She said that during their class, they try to teach the origin of the dance and how you have to respect it and appreciate that, because we are all from different backgrounds. Samantha, do you believe that, or is it a conversation in the Latinx community that the Latinx have an heritage in the African community, or the Latinx share the same heritage as Africans? Is that a thing in your community?
I think it's, just to clarify, I personally don't use the term Latinx. It's actually, I don't know how, when, where, why, but apparently it's become something that's just not appreciated in the community. I want to say that it was starting to be used derogatorily.
Okay.
So not sure the history of that. That's what I was told. So we identify as Afro-Latin because these movements are absolutely African-based. That is a conversation that in the Latin dance world, because these are now considered Latin dances, specifically salsa, bachata, these dances that come from Dominican Republic, they are not considered anything less than an African dance unless you wanted to then do a ballroom version. And if you wanted to do a colonizer's version, then you're not in the Latin dance community necessarily. So that's a very consistent conversation that we have throughout the community. A lot of the leaders in the community, they'll consistently share back and forth, posting about it, talking about it, including it in their movements. You have to speak on this. We did not create these movements. The style of dance that we use, yes, it comes from New York, and it's more updated and it's more relevant, and it is meant to be a social dance. It's not necessarily meant to be, it has taken off, and it's kind of saying salsa is like a big umbrella, and underneath the umbrella you have competitive dancers, social dancers, casual dancers. You have performers that only will perform and they don't compete, and there's all these different routes, that it's kind of grown. But it absolutely comes from an African background. And I think that unfortunately there are studios, not necessarily studios, there are instructors that believe that Latin dance movement taking this sway into getting more into the roots and the heritage, it's trendy, or they think that it's, a fad, and they don't understand, out of ignorance, I believe. I don't think that anybody could wishfully say that, but they don't understand, when we get into these breakdowns of the movements, that these movements do come from people who were enslaved. And you cannot take that away. You cannot speak on these dance movements and not give credit to the fact that we're moving side to side because, your back is arched over and you're hanging down because these movements were created by people who were in shackles. And if you don't know that,
well, people who were created who were created by people who were in shackles, or people who are originated from Africa. There's a distinction.
People who originated from Africa.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
now, is there a distinction in the you said Afro-Latin community? Okay.
So we call it the Latin dance community.
Okay. No, now let's move away from the dance community, because you can adopt a dance. I wanted to know, do the Latino community folks, like people in the Latino community, do they feel that their heritage is from Africa? Is that a big conversation in that community?
It depends on the household, and it depends on the people talking. I think that.
So it's a conversation there.
Yeah, but I think it depends on who you're speaking to. For example, even relating it back to the conversation about slavery, somebody who says, I'm still affected by slavery today, anybody could roll their eyes and say, no, you're not. But then if you say, well, hold on, here's my proof. I applied for a job. I was overqualified. They hired somebody underqualified who was a colonizer. They came from a white background. Then you would say, well, how is that slavery? You could say, well, it's systemic slavery. These people are trained, as it was spoken about, they're trained mentally to believe that there is a need for a fear. There is a need for a competition. There is a need for, I'm not good enough to get this job. I can't even apply for it. Or, oh no, I can't tell them that my friend is really good because I might get in trouble. And there's all these different, psychological, I think, effects that it's had on people, not just, in the way that it affects the Black community, but also the Latin community, where, especially during the protest, when we were experiencing this mass wave of protesting and rioting in Chicago due to the multiple police murders, I remember one specifically for me, at least this story is mine. When I went back to work, I worked at a very high-end salon in the Gold Coast of Chicago, and most of my coworkers were white. And I was sitting in my lunchroom, and the owner of the salon says to me, so Sam, I heard you were protesting. I said, yes, absolutely, I was. And he says, so tell me, why were the Blacks in the Latino neighborhoods? And I looked at him and I said, hold on, let me just telepathically ask all of the Blacks why we did that, because I guess I speak for all of us. And then looking around the room and realizing half of the Latinos in the room were wondering the same thing. And the other half was going, that was so ignorant. How can you do that? And seeing that it's so simple, that there was this narrative that was just created, boom, right there, that the Blacks were going after Latinos. Wow. And that happened where, this narrative is created, because how are you going to get how are you going to get people to pin against each other, knowing that minorities, when we come together, we are the greater, we are the greater in numbers and in strength and in information and knowledge and education. You keep pinning people against, we're never going to progress. So there's households that will say, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Black, because my roots come from Africa. And then you have households like my father, who's like, no, we're not Black, we're Mexican. And I said, Papi, you look darker than me. You have dark hair. You have these features that you understand if you walk down the street. If somebody looked at you quickly, they're going to assume that you're Black. They're not going to assume that you're Mexican. No, it's not the same. I said, but we have the same struggles, and this is a conversation we should have. And there was no room for it, because he was fed this narrative, even though he married a Black woman and he had kids with a Black woman, that we're not the same, that we cannot understand each other. We cannot go through similar experiences and learn from each other and support each other, that it was one against the other. And I think it's either one of the two conversations. I think a lot.
Wow. Guys, and I think because of time, so we're going to try and wrap up. Thank you so much for sharing, Samantha. All of you have shared some powerful points, and very, very encouraging. I want us to see, maybe touch on a few things on how we can move. What are some of the things that we do in addition to what has been done already, for us to begin to learn and appreciate, because we seem to love everybody else. Now, when I say we seem, Black people, we love every other race. We love, again, everybody else. But when it comes to our kind, the people that look like us, we tend to be a little bit more negative and stern. So why do we do that to each other? And so what can we do to move forward? But you said, Samantha, from what you just said, and I want to ask all of you, why do even Black people or people within the Black community, some people in the Black community, do not want to associate themselves with Black folks, period? Whether you're Caribbean or African or African American, there are some people who don't want to just identify themselves with Black folks. And you can hear some of the things that Samantha said, because her father's skin, probably it's not too dark. He may be a little light. I haven't met him, but sometimes people tend not to want to identify, and so why is that for you guys? I mean, why do you think people do that? Let me start with Cecilia quickly, and then we'll move around.
Right now, I would have to say first, safety. To be Black right now is to have a walking target on your back. So I wouldn't hold it against anyone who could identify as something else, or we call it passing. If you can pass as something else, unfortunately, you are probably safer right now. Honestly, you're safer from the other colonizers, as Sam has been saying, which I love, by the way. And also you're safe from other Black people, because not only are other people killing us, but we're killing each other as well. So I think in passing, you are unconsciously and possibly consciously protecting your livelihood.
Wow, that's powerful. Jifa. I think you were on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was muted.
I'm sure you've heard about some Africans saying, "I don't like to go to African parties. I don't want to mingle with African people at all." Yeah.
I have a friend, a very good friend, who does not. I mean, she's Nigerian, but she doesn't like. When she was buying a house, she didn't want to live in a Black environment. She didn't want to live in a neighborhood so she lives in a typically white, and she kept complaining about how all the neighbors be closing their windows when when they come out, and they're looking at her some type of way. Yes, you don't even recognize that your skin color is different. And so they're gonna say it out loud through their actions. But unfortunately, is the experiences, is the mental slavery. It's us being pitched against each other. They have divided us and they have conquered. And it's time for us to come together and with open-mindedness and getting to know each other. Taste your neighbor's food. Get to know their culture. Get to learn their language. Get to see what they do differently. Let's celebrate the differences other than putting it against each other.
I love that.
Let's be open-minded and let's celebrate each other, the differences. Let's get to know. I was surprised to see greens when I came to America, because it's very similar to some food we have, and so we are not that different. We have substituted, like in Ghana, we have substituted kontomire for spinach. We make spinach. Those of us living here, we make spinach for kontomire. People, and that's how things change. That's how the dynamism comes. And so we are not that different.
Yeah.
Your situation, your location might make you readjust or adapt to what you have.
Okay.
So let's enjoy ourselves.
I love that. Powerful. Let's enjoy ourselves. The way forward. Queen, the way forward. And touch a little bit on why Black people don't want to, some Black people don't want to identify with Black at all. And then the way forward. Quick, briefly, please.
I would, and yes, I would point to a research project that was done with little children. And with the little children, these little girls were shown baby dolls. There were Black baby dolls and there were white baby dolls. And they asked the little Black girls, which doll did they prefer? And an overwhelming response from the children, they were around 5 years of age or so. They wanted the white baby dolls. And we would have to ask ourselves, why would a child prefer to associate with something that is not their reflection in the mirror? And believe you me, that child's self-image, their self-concept, their self-esteem is as a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, it's a little onion that's being wrapped up. And as they get older, now they're in elementary school, now they're in middle school, now they're in high school, now they are an adult. And you know what type of an adult they are? The adult whose self-image, self-concept, their own culture has become damaged collateral goods. Damaged collateral goods as a result of oppression, of alienation, as a result of rejection from a little child.
Which is why they bleach also.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
I think we should have a follow-up of part 2 of this conversation. It's yeah, because we haven't even touched on the perception that Africans back on the continent have of African Americans here, whether positive or negative, and the disconnect and all of that. We haven't touched on a lot of things, but the way forward, which is why we bleach. A lot of Africans bleach because we don't like ourselves. Thank you so much, Ifa. Queen, the way forward.
That's true.
What can we do?
Well, the way forward, a lot of the African American culture was rooted in spirituality. Even from the roots of slavery, the call and response, even with Moses, bringing people going through the Underground Railroad. Even this country really was, a lot of people started out spiritually, but now it's like we've almost abandoned our faith. But I just have to say, I think the way forward is love. The way forward is love and education. The two hand in hand. The Bible says, with all you're getting, get an understanding. That's what the word, and it says wisdom. Wisdom is the principal thing. In fact, it said in scripture, wisdom calleth out in the streets. And those who ignore her receive the strong consequences. And I'm paraphrasing. So what is love? Love is God. Who is God? God is the creator of all life. It's a circle of love. Love begetting love, and getting educated on how to move properly in that love. Because love is not yada, yada, yada. Sometimes love it's a love that sets boundaries. It's a love that teaches discipline. And how do we grasp that? Through proper education. So I would say 2 things. Love and education is the way forward. And love that spirituality. I'm not saying you have to be churchified. Oh, we had church today. No, that is a part of it. But that intimate reflection of who you are.
Connection.
You are a reflection of God himself.
Ooh,
love it. Where should we get that education from? How should we educate ourselves? Where? How?
Well, I mean, honestly, that education, it really begins in your culture.
Thank you. Great, powerful answer. was in the PMARTT. I know the Queen, I know that wasn't satisfactory. I know you had more arsenals to release, but because of time, let's go to P. We will have a part 2 for sure. A continuation of this. This is the part 4, but we'll have a continuation of this part 4. PMARTT, the way forward.
I definitely agree with Dr. Peterson. She took it right out. It was education, learning, knowing about each other, and things to technology. Now we have, and that's what I think I've been looking at, and I've been really appreciating the advancement of technology. It allowed a lot of people to learn about Africa. If you look at it back in time when I started school, people used to tell me, go back to Africa. The same people are now dancing to Afrobeats. They're now loving Africa. You know why? Because they took the time to learn. We have a platform now that you can go on YouTube and watch documentaries about Africa. And I think the more the people learn about us, they will love us. And then another thing is, one person said that white people are the only one who understand our culture. You know why? Because they're curious. They go home.
Can I
They
correct
go
you?
home.
I didn't say the only.
Not the only ones, but they're more curious. You know, they understand better at work, right? They're more receptive to different cultures. And you know why? Because they take the time. Their parents or their grandparents, they've risked their lives to go into jungles to learn about what Africa is, and then they filmed it and they showed it to us. They educated themselves, and then that in return educated the world. Look at documentaries. Who do you see go in the jungle of Africa to learn about the tribes? You're not really putting color on it. It's not mainly Black people. So we need to take the initiative to go home. That's why I tell my brothers, I said, go home. You want land? I will show you where you want to build. You can build. We want you guys to come build. It takes that to learn, to understand, not just Africans, but to understand ourselves. Whether you go in Africa or anywhere else, or just talk to someone who looks like you. Sometimes you might think, hey, you look like me, but you do the same thing everyone else does. But the moment you open your mouth and start speaking, they're like, wow, I did not know you were like, I didn't know your story. You know what? We're all the same.
Yeah.
So it takes just that moment. That's the way forward. Patience and education.
Thank you so much, PMARTT. I'll just say Samantha. I'm not going to mess with the last name.
It's because it's not African. That's why it's so hard. I think kind of what I assumed when I heard that point about how white people are always the ones who are first and most hungry to learn about other cultures. And I think this might be controversial. I think if you don't have a tie to your culture, then you're always looking to learn about other cultures. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I know it might come off that way, but I think when you look at a lot of people in the United States that are white, they don't have traditional holidays that they're celebrating. You know, they're here celebrating, the St. Patrick's Day. But there's no sit down, have a meal, talk about the culture, talk about the history. There is not the same experience that we have. And so I think that that's part of why, you know, if I go home for a Mexican holiday with my family, I probably will not take my phone out and sit on Instagram. I'm going to engage with my elders, you know, and I think that that's kind of the big difference. I think the original question was, you know, why is it that someone might not want to be considered African or associated with? And I think as somebody who is passing, I could put my hair and my makeup a certain way and tell you, I've had people tell me, oh, I thought you were Puerto Rican this whole time. And I can tell you from my own experience, especially having had clients, you know, strangers that I don't know, and they're trusting me with their hair, their makeup, make comments to me that are so disgusting and racist. And in that moment, the immediate reaction for me is to say the right thing that's going to not only educate them, but also not come off as aggressive, because then I go from being the sweet girl who did my hair to the angry Black woman. I had a girl whose hair I was shampooing, and she said, oh, what do you think about the elections? This was years ago when Trump was running. I said, oh, I don't talk politics. And she looked at me in my eyes and she said, I'm just so glad he's getting rid of all those Mexicans. I said, oh, we're not that bad.
Wow.
And she has
Wow.
And she tipped me $100. And the manager came up to me. She loved her hair. I said, no, she didn't. Let me tell you why. My manager is I know she looked around the room. My manager was Mexican. The owner, Mexican. Receptionist, Mexican. Stylist, Mexican and Black. And I've had people make comments to me, you know, oh, I don't understand this violence, and the Blacks, just let them just kill each other. That's all they're good for anyway. I said, no, I think we're good for more. And they look at me shocked. And I think they realize in that moment I could have said, oh, I'm from whatever island. I could say I'm from anywhere. I could straighten my hair and not put on mascara, and I could tell you that I'm mixed with everything, because I realistically, I am. I know I am. But that's the moment when I realized this is why people lie. Because why would you see somebody shooting and step in front of the gun? These people can sometimes, they're shooting down Blacks as a whole. They don't even care. There's so much ignorance. They just assume dark skin, violent, dark skin, aggressive, uneducated. And they make these comments, and they're shocked to have an educated, respectfully telling them no response. And it's really hitting home now. 3 days ago, there was a family, a Latino family, whose son, who's absolutely looks like me, a little bit darker actually, and tighter curls. And you could call him anything. And he was with his friends in Chicago. And there's videos now viral. He survived, but an off-duty officer, regular civilian clothes, was grabbing him and accusing him of stealing his son's bike because he saw him touch the bike to move it over to place his bike next to it with all of his friends. And I was in tears watching this video thinking, God, this kid is sitting here watching this white man drag him, body slam at his knee, and all of his white friends stood up for him immediately, and they used privilege. And I think for people that are like me, that are maybe mixed or passing or white, or anybody who does not have this direct line of fire from the systemic racism, from people that are, not going to appreciate them.
Okay.
I'm not going to appreciate them. I think what would help is for us to speak up.
Absolutely.
Don't use your privilege.
Yes. Looks like this panel definitely needs like an hour or another episode. Man, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing. Those were powerful points. I wanted to interrupt earlier, whilst you were going, but all the points are powerful. It's been difficult for me to stop the show at the time that we intended to. It's almost 8 p.m. now. We wanted to stop end the show at 7:45 because we have other, there's other engagements. Dr. Peterson, you know what I'm talking about. So, but really want to thank everybody that has been part of the conversation this evening. She said, V says, great show. Thank you so much, V, for being part. Rebecca says, great conversations. A big shout out to you guys. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Avanti has been our number one audience today. Thank you so much, Avanti, for being a great Anyway, that goes to Avanti, and this one goes to, we just had one come in here. So there was a comment that I wanted us to read. Fasika comment, we've seen that already. Mike says, not so much in Chicago, but in New York, PR, Cuba, or DR, Afro-Latinos look just like all the rest of us Black folk. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining in. Maria Rice says, Dr. Peterson nearly it right on the head. And then Fasika said, we were told negative narratives about each other. We need to unlearn these through education and exposure, learning about each other's yesterdays and today, and being intentional about building community and connections. Thank you so much, Fasika, for your comment. And that would be the end of our discussion this evening. Next week, actually Sunday, watch out. We might have an episode, but information will be on social media for you all to see. Wednesday, we might not, because we expect the King sometime next week around the show time, so we might not have the show. But remember that you can go on our Instagram page and follow more of this conversation. Our YouTube page, you can subscribe and follow the stories. We are also on Spotify. All our episodes, a majority of them are on Spotify now. So while you are driving, you can listen to us. You can spread the word on Facebook. and Twitter and other social media platforms. Visit our website, theprogressivemindshow.com, and learn more about this, and also learn more about the exchange ceremony that is coming. Get your tickets at Eventbrite. Last thing I want to add to everything that's been said is that I've been blessed to have the opportunity to learn from these great folks. But another thing is that, as we have heard from our panelists, that Caucasians, white people, Europeans, they like to be keen, and they like to take interest in African culture, so they go to Africa and they study. I've also seen African Americans, a lot of them, go to Africa and study our culture. Currently, as we speak, Professor Hansard of Columbia College is learning Twi. He's learning the African dialect so that he can do a lot more work in Ghana. I have so many African American scholars, regular folks, and not educated folks who are trying to learn the culture either on YouTube by watching the videos, or go into the continent for those who can afford it. But the question is, how many Africans or Caribbeans come to the United States and try to learn about African Americans? How many of us go on YouTube to research, to find out how they built this country, how they had to survive what they survived to pave way for a lot of us immigrants to thrive in this country? And so that is the encouragement that I want to live to my fellow Africans and African Americans in America, England, Australia, wherever you find yourself. Learn about the Black people that are already in those countries, especially as we speak about the as we speak about the United States. The Progressive Mind Show, we're going to organize a trip to the South to learn more about African American story and their history and their struggle. We'll be putting that announcement sometime on our social media platforms. If you want to register, we'll give you the information. But we will also take that trip. We will also make that frantic effort to learn about fellow brothers and sisters in this country. And so on that note, I would like to thank you all again. Jifa, tell us the meaning of your name, please, quickly, before we go.
My name literally means solace, like,
cool hats.
Cool hats, yes, literally cool hats.
Yes.
That is something that brings solace. So
wow, that's a beautiful thing, like peace, right?
yes.
Okay. So
it's like not to take too much time, but my tribe usually names gives names according to what, or depending on what the circumstance is. And so you are born to give solace to your parents, or just like to appease them. So, they give you that name. And so if they feel like you're a blessing, they'll call you Senna, So those are what our names mean.
Awesome. Well, we both happen to be from the same tribe and from Ghana, and so Ghanaians.
That's why you're being biased.
Yes, I have been biased since the beginning. Please forgive me, y'all. But everybody knows that we love each other, and we are trying to preach that. And that is why we are on this platform. All of us five here, we believe in one love. We believe in the diaspora. Believe in all of us. On that note, again,
nice
thank
to
you
meet all of you.
We can hear you all. You're all. I don't know why you.
Oh.
Likewise, nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. All right, Samantha, Queen, Peterson, Jifa, and Cecilia. We would be engaging you guys, and I'll let you know. I'll keep in touch with you to see when we can have the follow up of this conversation. On that note, remember, to whom much is given, much is required. This has been your host, Alinko, and we shall be here again to serve you. Get your tickets at Eventbrite and invite friends. Reverend Jesse Jackson is going to be crowned as an African king right here in the city of Chicago. History will be made. God bless you. Bye-bye.